This is FE Peer Review. The date is November the 3rd in the morning. This is the morning of Election Day in the United States. No results have yet emerged. I am preparing this as a pre-election results analysis. Many of us were surprised, maybe one way to put it, by the results of the 2016 election in light of the information we received from pollsters through the media, as reported in the media. Lots of people asked lots of questions after that experience. This is a kind of a follow-up to that. I am not a statistician. I am not a journalist. I'm a voter who is not expert in those subjects. And as such, this video is about how that information gets communicated to people like me and many others like me who don't have the background and knowledge to do the analysis ourselves. So what I'm going to do here is just briefly walk through the final polls that were out before Election Day. I've summarized them, and what we're going to do is come back to this in a few days after all of the election results have been published and compare those results to the polls and information that was easily available to people like myself. So there's a website called Real Clear Politics, which I have relied on for a large part of this. They are a very nice website. I like the way their website's organized, very easy to navigate and understand. It's a poll compilation website. They don't conduct polls. They simply gather data from all the different polls and put it out there in formats that are easy to understand. So I've drawn from a lot of their web pages in putting this little slideshow together. So we're going to quickly go through state by state, a group of, I think, 14 or 15 states, and show what they have at present. We'll start with Florida. So this is how their page is organized. We've got the state listed at the top. They've got the most recent polls. I'm looking back roughly 2 weeks in most cases, although I've gone back to the beginning of October in a few cases where there were very few polls otherwise to pick from. They've got a list of the polls. They've got the sample size, the margin of error, and then the spread between the two politicians, and their analysis. This bar, the RCP average, is their own analysis based on the polls of the spread. That's not just a simple average. And down at the bottom we have a nice little graph of going back several months. With each state they have additional, if you scroll down, they have additional polls, and in some cases I've fallen back. So that's Florida. This is Pennsylvania. And I'm just going to flip through these, so you can pause the video anytime you want if you want to look at the numbers. That's Pennsylvania. There's Wisconsin. As we go through these, I have created a little graph of my own that summarizes all of these. And we'll come to that at the end, and that's where I'll discuss what I'm going to be doing in the next step in order to analyze the results in light of these polls. This is Michigan, Ohio, Minnesota. You'll notice that in a lot of cases, for instance, the spread, it says 4.3. The margin of error of this particular poll, Survey USA, is 4.6, and the other polls are 2.9 and 3.1. So strictly speaking, a margin of error of 4.6 means a plus or minus. So anything, it could go twice that. It could go up 4.6 or down 4.6, which means that this spread that they're describing as a spread is in fact within a zone that contains the margin of error. So it's, statistically speaking, could be a tie. You could see 4.3 up here, but that, strictly speaking, could end up being, could actually represent a tie. That's Minnesota. Here's Iowa. You can see For example, in Iowa, it's quite close. 1.4 is the spread, whereas the margins of error, on average, they're around 3.5%. More Iowa polls. Arizona, Nevada, Texas, Georgia. Feel free to stop the video, pause the video at any point and look at the numbers in more detail. I'm just going to flip through them, give you a chance to pause it if you want, and just keep on moving here. That's New Hampshire, Maine, Colorado, New Mexico. Okay, that completes our list. I'm going to go to a little graph that I have made. This sums up all of those states. What we see is the states are listed across the bottom, same order that we just saw them: Florida, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. This 0 on the left would be a margin of a spread of 0 between the two candidates for a particular poll. Any poll that showed Trump leading, I put as a red dot coming down this line. So Trump leading by 1%, Trump leading by 2%. These polls, Trump leading by 1. Here's a cluster of polls that Trump leading by, Biden leading by 1%, Biden leading by 2%, 3%. And the number of little blue dots represents the number of polls. So we have a cluster here. We have a cluster of 5 polls that all showed Biden leading by 5% in Pennsylvania. Here's a cluster of 3 polls that show Trump leading by 3% in Pennsylvania. Let's zoom in here. I have included a blue, little blue figure with a dot inside, which represents the Real Clear Politics analysis, and then a larger blue square is the average. I've used the same symbol for red to represent where Trump is leading according to the Real Clear Politics analysis. So this chart shows you via these color dots roughly where the polls cluster. The little blue squares show you the averages. The square with the dot inside shows you the Real Clear Politics analysis. Seems that in general, the Real Clear Politics analysis is less than the average. Here we see them actually favoring Trump by about 0.5%, while the average is at approximately 1% in favor of Biden. Here we see them favoring Biden by 5%, while the average is closer to 7%. So what I'm going to do is, when all the election results have been released for all these states and the final numbers are in, I'm going to go back to this graph and I'm going to mark where the actual results ended up, and we'll be able to compare those to these all these different polls and see why there are, for example, outliers up here at the top of the screen. There's all these outlier polls. We need to find out which polling firms are releasing outlying poll numbers like that, and who knows, maybe the results are correct for those and all these guys down here are wrong. We'll find out. Well, in a few days, maybe a week or two. Next thing I'd like to do here is just take a quick look at a couple of the newspaper headlines as of November 2nd and a few columnists and what they're saying. This here is the Washington Post. They're showing an article on early voting turnout, high-level turnout for early voting. The general consensus is that the early voters seem to be more Democrat than Republican, which suggests that states like Texas are seeing a larger than normal Democratic turnout. We'll see if that holds up after the final results are in. We've got battleground polling state averages on the right side of the screen here. They've listed the states, some of the same states that I just covered. They're showing a pale blue where Biden has a slight lead, and a darker blue where he has a stronger lead, where the lead is within the margin of error on average of the polls. They are just shown without any blue color. So this is the post analysis of what where the situation stands as of November 2nd. Let's take a look at a few others. Let's see, this is another Washington Post article showing Biden and Cunningham hold slim leads in North Carolina. Quinnipiac just released some polls. They were among the last of the big polling companies to release polls. They're showing Biden leading Trump by a margin of 5% in Florida, Biden leading Trump by a margin of 4% in Ohio, and nationally by 11%. So we'll come back and check that out and see how that pans out. Another Quinnipiac poll that was released just a few days earlier: Florida, Iowa, Pennsylvania, Ohio. Some more information regarding the Quinnipiac polling. They give their margins of error down at the bottom of the screen here, plus or minus less than 3%. That puts it at quite a strong poll. Decent sized counts here, 1,300, 1,200 people contacted. Margin of error of under 3% is unusual for most of these polls, so in theory these polls should be quite a bit more accurate than others. We'll see how close they are when the results are in. This is a little article on Real Clear Politics by Cheryl Atkinson. She's promoting Trump as the coming winner. In the end, all things considered, this political outsider is predicting another 4 years for Trump, and thanks to the factors such as protests, etc., he'll rake in a larger popular vote than he did before. So that's what Atkinson has to say. We'll see if that pans out. Here's Sabato. What's his first name? Larry Sabato. That's Sabato's Crystal Ball. He's got a popular website, and he's made his predictions for the day. We'll come back and look and see how those turn out. This is more from Sabato's Crystal Ball. This is for his previous ratings and his updated and final ratings for each of these states before the election. This was all updated on November 2nd. What was called toss-up, he's now showing leans Republican or leans Democratic. More from Larry Sabato's website. I think this is Sabato's website. I may have gotten that wrong. I'll come back and correct that in the next video if I have. Quick political report. These are his analysis of the toss-up states that he considers toss-up, states that lean Republican, states that lean Democrat. We'll see if these states leaning Democrat actually end up favoring Biden or not. We'll see whether these states, there are none leaning Republican, just likely Republican. We'll see if any of these likely Republican states go for Biden. That's unlikely. We'll see which of these lean Democrat, go for Trump. And we'll see how the toss-ups turn out. This one at least leaves a toss-up. This is the same for the Senate. These are the Senate seats that they're looking at. And this is 538. Nate Silver, he has released his forecast. Here it is, November 2nd, 2020. We'll come back and see how it pans out. That's it. That's all for now. What we're going to do is come back to all these things and review them in light of the actual numbers when they are out in a few more days. Thanks for stopping by. Please do subscribe to the channel and click the icon for getting notifications so you can get the follow-up video. Thanks. Bye.